And it's not such a bad world, to be honest. Mindless scrolling at night, or you do that and you start watching a reel, and before you know it, 2 hours have gone by, and all you've been doing is just been on that phone. And after that 2 hours, you feel mentally fatigued, and yet you feel you've done nothing. So find a way to be far more true to yourself and being honest and being brutally honest to yourself, because that's when change happens. If for everyone making money, buying a house is success, maybe that's not what it is for you.
Podcast is like being at peace. So would you like to say that I am meditating when I'm doing this podcast? Would we like term it like that? आज पैसे खत्म हो गए, मंथ एंड आ गया, वो ये कर रहा है, मैं कुछ नहीं कर रहा हूँ.
For me, when somebody like Narayan Murthy says that, I used to work for 70 hours, or his wife has now said he used to work actually 90 hours, what he's trying to say, or what I take away, is
Hello everyone and welcome back to AP Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into AP Podcast, and thank you so much for giving so much of love and support to us. It really means a lot to us. Well, guys, talking about today's episode, I think it is one of those episodes that you should definitely check out. And this is the first episode, I would say, that really is not centralized in one direction, and it really focuses on seeing life from a very big perspective. आप किसी भी प्रोफेशन में हो, आप कहीं भी जाना चाहते हो, I think this podcast is going to tell you a lot about how professionally things are going to evolve for you, how as a person you are going to evolve, and definitely how you need to maintain that. हमारा जो पिछला पॉडकास्ट था वो भी इसी जॉनरा का था, और जो ये वाला पॉडकास्ट है ये डेफिनेटली उस जॉनरा का है. And speaking about today's guests, Pragya Mishra, who is director at Truecaller, director public affairs at Truecaller, and she's really a very amazing person. And I must say that her insights, her views about corporate, about life, is something that you should truly spend your time on. And apart from that, she also owns a YouTube channel where she hosts various personality on her podcast show, and the channel name is Pragyan. So the another thing that I really wanted to add on for this conversation was that in this podcast, for the first time, you'll see two podcasters interacting with each other on this channel I'm talking about. So when that happens, that's very unique, because two people who literally have the habit of talking and listening are going to create a conversation in a very better way. The same thing happened with this. So, without wasting any of your precious time, let's directly roll into the podcast. So, AP podcast starting in 3, 2, 1.
But when I'm doing something like this, I also think for me it's an interruption. If I'm spending time and a phone rings, it's a distraction. So I decide, मतलब 20 मिनट आपने फ़ोन नहीं देखा तो कुछ नहीं होगा. No, I mean, my no job is such that if I don't look at my phone for 20 minutes or half an hour, that something's going to blow up so much that I can't reel it back in.
You don't even get FOMO.
Maybe earlier I used to, but no, not now. Because I think it's also with age and with experience and the position that you're at in work, right? I mean, now there isn't any FOMO as such, because I feel like if there are things to be done and there are decisions to be taken, वो हो जाएगा. जिनको मेरा डिसीजन चाहिए वो 20 मिनट में कुछ नहीं बदलेगा. So it's okay. Unless there's a crisis, then I'm completely connected.
But being on social media and then having this podcast, like I almost check my account or the podcast account 100 times a day.
Oh, really?
Like I am an addict. Call it narcissism or whatever it is, but like I'm very critical about it. What's happening there? What's not being posted? So that like really triggers me if something is not good or a reel is not doing good. Like this thing is not with you.
Again, I think it just comes with becoming much more comfortable with yourself. So, also, I'm doing the podcast with a very different goal. I'm not doing it like we were talking. I'm not racing for numbers. That's not my goal. Of course, when growth happens, I'm like, amazing. But I think what really gives me a lot of joy is when people share their stories, or they say that, we heard this and this happened. So I think those are the things that give me joy. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think it's just at different phases in your life, different things motivate you.
पॉडकास्ट स्टार्ट हो गया. Like it's okay, like if we move this conversation like this.
I'm okay with whatever you want.
Okay.
It's your show, dude. Whatever you want. I'm going to go with the flow.
Like I don't like that sort of thing when you're introducing and all that. Like you can do separately in a video, but when you do it in front of the guest, it looks like a bit cliched. Like
100% agree with you.
not a journalist, right? Like both of us sort of not a journalist.
No, and I think if you introduce me also, I feel very conscious. Like I did this podcast recently and they did introduce me, and for me it's almost like I have an imposter syndrome. I'm like, no, they're not talking about me. Like I still have a long way to go in my life. So great, whatever achievements they're talking about, ठीक है, but अभी journey बहुत लंबी है. So
But they are not talking about you as an individual. Like they are talking to your positions, right? You're meaning that?
Yeah, that, and also even if they're talking to the positions, there's still a long way to go. I always measure my success based on where I want to get to, not where I have come from. It's good to assess where you've come from, good to think back and look back and introspect and learn from what you could have done better. But I don't use it as a benchmark for feeling very successful or giving myself a huge tap on my back. Do it off and on, but it's very rare. I think I always want to look ahead and see what more can I do, how can I get better, how can I evolve, add many more dimensions to me. I think those are the things that drive me.
And like being a woman, do you think there is this specific journey that you hold in your life, both in corporate and in terms of the social media thing that you're doing?
100%. But I can also tell you that when I'm in a room, and that's been most of my career, where I have been in a room where it's mostly male dominated and I'm, the one woman many times, I see that as a massive strength because I bring a view on the table, which is the opposite to the group think, so to say. And I think there's a lot of value to that. And also, the second thing for me is I have never contributed thinking, oh, I'm a woman. I've always contributed thinking, what will get the best impact for that conversation? What is going to be the best outcome for the company or for my team? And can I really outwork everyone who's on the table?
Yeah. इतना भी uncandid, इतना भी candid नहीं करना था.
I think for me, being a woman now in a leadership position, I see it as an asset. It gives me an opportunity to inspire and also groom other corporate leaders, specifically women, because I think that's what I did when I was moving up or looking for inspiring stories. I heard an Indra Nui, or I read a book on Sheryl Sandberg where she spoke about how you should lean in. And I think that book really changed my perspective on corporate life. Also, the challenges with which women come into the workplace. I think I've never been in a position where I've walked into an office and there's been no ladies' room, at least for now. Yes, it's dirty. That's another challenge. Or the guys in the office don't know where the ladies' room is. But at least I have that facility compared to maybe the earlier generation who didn't even have that option. If you read Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, she talks about how when she was in Silicon Valley and she walked in and she was an engineer, so a very odd kind of situation where a woman is an engineer and she walked into so many meetings and there was not even a ladies' room. So luckily, all the hard work that a lot of these women leaders have done in India or even globally has helped pave the way for it to be better for my generation. But are we still there yet? Not at all. I mean, we still have a really, really long way to go. And I think one thing which I feel really needs to change is a lot of the conditioning that both women and men walk into a corporate world. And that conditioning really comes from how we grew up and also society. I'll just give you an example. I drove here, right? And I was trying to park my car. And there was a guy who was trying to help me. And literally he said, "Arey, aap nikal jao, aapse nahi gaadi khadi hogi."
Really?
Haan. So that's the conditioning, right? Like, he looks at a woman driver and he's like, इससे तो हो ही नहीं पाएगा, तो छोड़ो मैं ही कर दूंगा. And then I parked my car, and he had a kind of a surprised look on his face, but he's not going to say, oh, you did it well or you drove well. No such thing. It's like, okay, let's move on in life. So I'm just giving this example to say how even when women walk into a workplace, there is already a certain kind of bias that we are looked upon with, and I think there's a massive struggle to fight against that bias. Some of them being the fact that you're going to rear a family, which means you're not going to be as committed as a guy. But I look at it as, because I have to rear a family, I'm just going to be really smart with my time, which means when I walk into work, I'm not going to spend 15 minutes getting a coffee and taking a smoking break and doing all of the other stuff, which I'm not saying is bad, but I'm just going to prioritize my life to be that I'm going to go in there, I'm going to give my 100%, I'm going to work because I need to go back because I have many more responsibilities. And so I think I've seen that women have been far more mindful and thoughtful about how they show up to work and the kind of outcomes that they bring. I also think it makes a lot of business sense to have women in leadership or even women in the workplace.
Because they are presentable?
No, not at all. Again, that's your conditioning speaking.
No.
Not
Like,
because
not
they-
in terms of like people are going to criticize me after this, but just as in like when you have like, I'm talking this from a male perspective, as in also a guy who is in college. Like if a guy is having a female friend, like he's seen as someone who is having a decent amount of maturity. I think when you have a woman in your life, it is automatically like you will learn a lot from them.
Very interesting.
So like with respect to that only, I was asking like, is it because they are more presentable than men?
That's, of course, one factor because I think you become far more open in your approach. You're right, because if you're in a relationship or if you have friends who are also of the opposite sex, you're learning something about them through those interactions. Like a woman would when you have guy friends, you learn a different perspective to the same situation. So 100%. But I think what I meant by that is the fact that 50% of your consumers, if not more, are going to be women when you take your product. In some cases, much higher, depending on who your target audience is. But I'm saying in any situation, let's say I talk about Truecaller or WhatsApp or the technology companies that I have worked for. And if I am able to get the point of view of my user within my company, won't I roll out a better feature? Because many times a woman's perspective is like a blind spot for a very male dominated thinking. One is that because you're just building better for everyone if you have diversity in the company. Because you're doing a lot of the brainstorming within that conference room, which if you didn't have a woman, you'll roll out the product, people will give you feedback, then you'll go back to the drawing board, then you'll fix it. Maybe you'll still not understand it because you don't understand what they're trying to tell you because you don't even have someone to empathize with that feedback. Right? So I think it just gives you that diversity and that very large spectrum to understand if you have many more points of view. And that's also extending now, so, especially like it's not just about women, it's about, LGBTQ,
Yeah.
it's about everyone else. How can you get many more voices around the table? I think that's very important. And I also feel that, and therefore I feel, women in corporate is crucial and makes a lot of business sense from that point of view. And I also think that in leadership role, women are far more predisposed to emotional quotient, a higher emotional quotient. And I feel that when you're at a leadership role, you get that role, or what you're paid for is the decisions and the judgment that you make. I'm not paid for my skill because at that level everyone's getting the same skill. आपने ग्रेजुएशन करी है, आप MBA पढ़े हो, आपने 15-20 साल की एक्सपीरियंस ले ली है, so you have more or less the same. But what sets a good leader apart from an average manager or an average leader is the judgment I make in that moment for the company, which could pivot and shift the direction that the company takes. And that I think comes with a lot of empathy, kindness, being in touch with your emotions. And I think women are just better at that, I would say. I'm not generalizing it, but we're just predisposed to being better at that.
But isn't being emotional in a setup like corporate bit con on your side?
Not at all. I think again it's a very fixed notion because it's been mostly male dominated, the corporate world, where showing emotion or being vulnerable is considered as a weakness. I think if you read Brené Brown or you read the leadership conversations these days, it's all about, can you be authentic? And that innovation and breakthrough conversations happen when you and I, as colleagues, can really sit down and talk about what's happening with me, what am I good at, what are you good at, and let's try and complement our skill sets and get the best out for ourselves and for the company and for the team. If you are not vulnerable and all the time I'm just trying to show up as, oh, I know everything, like I'm the master, I know everything. No one person can know everything. If I'm having a difficult time at home or in my personal life and I just show up all the time being very strong, I'm not going to be able to get the support I need. And I'm just going to drain myself out completely and either be burnt out or not be able to function at my workplace and not be a good parent, daughter, friend, all the other relationships I have. And especially in this context, because I don't see now there is a boundary between work and life. Like, I don't see it that way. I love what I do. For me, like, this concept of work life balance is very flawed. Because if you like what you do, then you will just do it. And I'm not saying that, I'm not talking about 70-hour weeks here. That's not what I'm referring to. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't feel like work. It's like it's 9:15 in the night and you're doing this. Does it feel like work for you?
I don't think so.
You're enjoying it, right? And that's because you love it. And so, therefore, I feel if you're loving something and there are no real boundaries, then I have to bring all of myself to work. Which means if I am feeling down, if I am struggling with something, I should have a space where I can talk about it. It doesn't, and bringing all of myself to work and being authentic doesn't mean I'm having a tough time at work तो मैं आके आपको गाली देने लगूं या मैं आपके साथ गुस्सा होती रहूं या मैं snap करूं. That's not what it means, because that sort of behavior also comes with a certain level of maturity, which means that to be authentic is, I come and I tell you, like I was telling you earlier, that look, I've had a really long day, I'm a little tired, but let's power through. I want to have this conversation with you. I'm really looking forward to it, and let's do it. And when I was vulnerable, you actually stepped up and said, can I get you something to eat? You've had a really long day. Can I get you a coffee? And that's what real relationships look like. And that's what really creates a healthy culture in an organization. Because you're being kind. Because I was vulnerable.
I'm really having this curious thought in my mind with this sort of persona. How are you surviving in corporate? Because like I just had this much amount of corporate experience and it was brutal. The only thing that I remember that people are only crazy about booze there because I happen to work in Gurgaon. So it was the first thing on their priority list that I have to go there tomorrow. So obviously I wanted to bring this booze culture in there, incorporate, and obviously the cigarette culture, the vape culture nowadays. But like still with your personality, I'm a bit shocked. Like how is a person like you in this sort of setup?
It's taken me a while to also understand what I want and what I don't want, and that happens. It takes time. I know a lot of your listeners are maybe college students or young adults who are figuring out what they want to do, and it's not like I knew straight out of college what I wanted to do. Or for that matter, even today, sometimes I think, is this really what I want to do? Can I do more or can I do something different? So I think that's a constant conversation and checking in I keep doing with myself. But I think one thing which has not changed are my values to what I bring to work and what I am as an individual. And I think those values have been consistent, which is, I want to do the best that I can. So I'm always looking for excellence in whatever I do. And sometimes that also comes at a cost because you tend to push people around you and then, you come across as very ambitious or very abrasive. And that happened to me early on. But I feel as you get more experience and you also get older and wiser, you realize that kindness is very important. And,
Humility or kindness?
Both. Humility, of course, 100%. Humility is for sure very, very important. But I think kindness is undervalued or rather underrated and also not incentivized in the corporate culture. So, to what you said, which is, you walked in and, it was brutal for you. But that's also because we are just, you know, the general sense seems to be let's be macho and let's go in there and let's get shit done and let's leave.
Metrics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And metrics is just one of the success factors. If you are only looking at metrics, your employee retention is going to be really low. And if you're wanting to grow as a company and you are wanting to be successful, it's the people around you that make you successful. I feel like as a manager, my constant endeavor is that as I'm growing and learning, can I make myself redundant? Because only when I can make myself redundant and my team can fill and start to step up to do the work that I was doing, that I can finally move up, right? If no one is being able to fulfill the role that I am doing, then my leadership is not going to allow me to go up, right? So I think if you think of it like that, then I am also here to collaborate and not to compete always, then you bring a completely different mindset to work. And that's a decision you can take because it's in your control. How you show up, how you want to be perceived at work, and your values is in your control. So bring that into the workplace. It might take you a little bit longer, or you may not be part of the rat race and you might choose to make different decisions. But it's decisions that you made which you will be happy with. And when you come back, at least you'll be more at peace. Because I think being authentic is a lot about how I feel inside and what my external environment is like. If I'm feeling kind inside, I want to do more, and I'm in a situation, in an external environment which actually doesn't allow me to do this and is actually toxic, and I continue to be there, it's really going to take away from who I am as an individual. So I should be wired in and have my radar on whether this environment is giving me strength, is it giving me energy, or is it draining my energy? And again, all this I didn't know when I was in college, right? You're just sensitive, you're just staying in touch with yourself. And then you learn these things. And if there are environments which are taking energy away from me, then I want to try and move out of it. Of course, not take drastic measures like go give my resignation tomorrow, but start thinking that, okay, this is not working. I have to find other options, So I was in a consulting organization as well early on in my career, and I learned immensely there. There isn't a doubt about learning. But I realized that there was a lot of politics in that organization. And in the beginning, I was cribbing about it. Itni politics hai, people backstab, there's all of this, Typically we do that. Arey, mere saath hi kyun ho raha hai, ye kya hai? And then one day I got tired of cribbing. I also got tired of, मैं बोलते ना अपना खुद का दुखड़ा सुनते सुनते I also got exhausted. I was like, what is this? I have to find a solution. And then I realized that, look, this organization is actually gearing me up to deal and to learn with how do you navigate around politics. Why don't I look at it like that? Because the politics is not going to change. That struggle is not going to change. If I leave from this organization and go to another one, maybe the politics might be less, but there'll be some other challenge. So can I change the way I look at it, which is this is an opportunity for me to learn something? And can I understand how actually politics work? And once I got curious, it allowed me to detach myself from that situation and actually see it from a view that I'm not in it, I'm not the victim, but can I actually just learn how these people play games? Because it's really cool and interesting. Because the next time somebody tried to play that game with me, at least I knew what's going on because I was aware and I'd been there.
So it's like if they are bad, you also try to inculcate that into your life?
No, not at all. In fact, you watch it with it's like a camera in here. This camera is watching us. But can I just step away from my situation and be able to see it in a detached place? Because the minute I see it in a detached way and I'm not emotional about ये मेरे साथ क्यों हो रहा है, but you're able to step away and say ये हो रहा है, इससे मैं क्या सीख सकती हूँ? ये कुछ ना कुछ मेरे को सिखाएगा. Can I learn from that situation? Because only when I learn from it can I rise above it. I'm not saying play politics. Not at all. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm not saying you should start playing politics. I'm saying if you're able to step away and observe what's happening, you get a different perspective because you are now looking at it what we call objectively. And so then you learn what tricks are being played on you, and then you can rise above it and also laugh at it because most of those things don't impact you, to be honest.
So embracing the change or being part of the change.
Getting above, rising above the situation, and then bringing the change in you, which is required. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but what I mean to say is, like, I'll share this anecdote with you around, the consulting company, which is I used to be in the team which used to do a lot of business development. And business development is all about relationships, right? मैं आपको जानती हूँ, आप एक 500 करोड़ की कंपनी या 1000 करोड़ की कंपनी चलाते हैं, आपकी एक you have a challenge around audit or tax. I come in and I'm like, I can solve this for you. So I do that. And then when I go back, somebody else wants to take credit for the business that I brought in. It's a very normal thing that happens in the corporate culture, especially in sales organizations. And so somebody else wants to take credit. There were two ways of me thinking about this, which is, do I be like, oh my God, this is so unfair, how dare they? And very often women want to play that card also, I'm a woman and this is why they're doing it to me. But I don't want to misuse that. And so I was like, okay, this is the situation. What can I do out of the situation? And because I know the business owner, I called him up and I said, look, I brought the business in and that's how it worked. Can you call up the respective partner and let him know that we have a relationship and that's why the business came in? He's like, sure, of course I'll do it. So what I mean is, if I was part of the politics, I would have tried to play some other dirty game to go against the person who was trying to take credit. I didn't do any of that. I just figured what's going on, stepped aside, and figured out what is my strength. My strength in this situation was having a relationship and doing the work to close the deal and building that relationship with the owner of the business. So that's what I mean. I'm saying stepping away and getting perspective and then working off your strengths.
That's how you are sustaining in corporate.
More often than not, yes. And it's not such a bad world, to be honest. ऐसा नहीं है.
It appears to be. Like placements are happening, so like I don't know like if it's completely true because I heard it from someone, but like most of the times like there are some HR person who are coming in and they are just doing ragging of students basically. Like if you don't know just one particular thing, suppose the genre is about, let's say, stocks, and you don't know how a particular stock works or what is, like, it could be any particular term, it could be Nifty, like tell me about Nifty, suppose that person didn't know, so they're going to rag them, like literally. So it was like this culture. Because of this, many people think that it's toxic. Like I'm telling this from a very young perspective, as in people of how my age group see this. So everyone wants to escape from it. No corporate job, just for money if someone wants to do it. So
No, I mean, I appreciate you sharing it so honestly, and I'm sure that's the case. I mean, there is, and if they're ragging, that's very, very sad that that's happening because ultimately you all are the future of the country. I mean, we shouldn't forget that. And breaking your confidence is not going to help. Mentoring or good leadership is bringing and extracting the best out of the person. It's not that I break you down and demolish you so much that you can't even rise from where I've put you, right? That's not the idea at all. So it's unfortunate that that is happening. And I wish it was different. But I think the value that young people bring is a lot of energy, a lot of exuberance, a lot of new ideas. Your generation doesn't have the challenge around knowledge, but I think there is a challenge around how do you use that knowledge, or where is the wisdom in that knowledge. So you have a lot of information, you have access to a lot of things, but how can you convert that information to make it useful for yourself. I think that is the biggest struggle that I feel you all have. But coming back to the corporate culture, I think, maybe I was lucky that I was able to take these decisions around really spending time and aligning and resonating with the culture of the company. I mean, I think I did a lot of homework early on the companies where I wanted to work, or ask a lot of those questions during the recruitment period. I mean, I didn't get recruited from college. I had my own startup in the beginning, and then I went into consulting. But I think I still spent a lot of time in asking questions. So I think that's what I would encourage people who are looking to join companies. Spend a lot of time in reading about their values, their culture, which is now available publicly on every website. Go on to Glassdoor and find out what is like the feedback that has been given about the culture in the company. Because I've realized that most times people quit managers and they don't really quit companies. And so, therefore, one is understanding the culture of the company, and then second, just asking a lot of questions around what does my role entail, what are my expectations, in the sense, what is the expectation from me, and just understanding who are you going to be working with. So don't be shy to ask questions, but be polite. Not asking questions
Like
in
an
a
interrogation.
exactly, because the other person also, at the end of the day, even if they are being disrespectful to you, doesn't mean you have to do that, because you can again control how you want to show up. And if your value is to be respectful, that's how you should be. But that does not take away the fact that you should not ask questions, because it's your life, it's your time, and you should be asking those questions that you feel like you're spending your next 2-3 years of your life in a place that will groom you.
Yeah. Moving bit towards the technical aspect, like I was really very keen to ask you this because you worked in WhatsApp, and that's sort of a part of Meta. And Meta is that organization, I think, without which we cannot even spend a single day. Like literally, starting from our morning to the end when we are at our beds, I think वो एक चीज़ है जो हम मेटा यूज़ कर ही रहे हैं, whether it's through Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever it is. I really want to know how are things working behind the curtain, as in obviously you can't give some things explicitly that I can understand, but they are creating content so engaging that WhatsApp recently added this feature of broadcasting channels where like public figures can create their own channels, they can share their updates, and then there are stories. It was a old update only, but now they are trying to modify it in different ways. Creating content so eye catchy for viewers, especially for young viewers. It's like we are mindlessly scrolling. And I happened to see this documentary called Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix.
Yes.
So I think that pretty much explains what is happening there. Like, there are these chambers where three people, like, which are basically an incarnation of AI, seeing how is this person reacting to what stuff, and then they are recommending you that stuff. So how is thing behind the curtain when you're doing this?
I think that's the reason why I was working at WhatsApp, because I think the values of a messaging platform is a little bit different from a social media network, right? A social media platform, which is more Facebook, Instagram. Here it was more around one-to-one messaging, creating a private environment for people to say what they felt and make sure that it's just between the two people who we are interacting with. So WhatsApp, really the value was communication in an encrypted manner. And it really started with Brian and Jan, who were the founders of WhatsApp, because they came from Russia, and basically there you couldn't have private conversations. And when they moved to the US and they would call their family back home, their mothers would be, that watch what you're saying, because we're on the phone line, we're on a landline, or even on a mobile. And so this constant threat of feeling like conversations are always being eavesdropped on is what motivated them and inspired them to start WhatsApp. And I think there the incentive to engage is more to stay connected with your friends and family. Of course, with channels, things have changed. But when I was there, really, the goal was that how can we make sure that, especially during COVID, if you notice, that's when video calling was rolled out, group calling was rolled out, a bunch of these features came out, and I remember so many people telling me when I was at WhatsApp at that time, or rather, I'll share the story with you where I had met this owner of a small business, and she used to run her full business over WhatsApp. And so I had showcased her story at that time on our global website, which really helped her get a lot of business. And she was doing great work. That's why I thought it was really important to put her work out there. And then during COVID, she messaged me saying, WhatsApp has really saved me. And I said, what happened? And like so many others who've had such sad stories where she had lost her mother and her mother was in a different city, her family was in a different city, she was somewhere else. And she said the only last week or 10 days I could speak with my mother was because of WhatsApp. And I almost had tears in my eyes. And then it's in those moments that you feel like, okay, at least the little bit that you're doing in your work is contributing to a bigger outcome or a bigger goal where people are actually, she's got closure because of that. Can you imagine the emotional trauma that so many people have gone through because they've not been able to speak to their loved ones or, even go to their cremations? And she said, my sister was there and she video called me and I was able to be part of the cremation. And I know it's a very sad story, but what I mean is that is the power that technology can bring. And so at WhatsApp, that was really the goal when I was there. And I really felt extremely committed to that goal of connecting people and having authentic conversations. I used to laugh when I used to be at WhatsApp that if you cut me, I'm going to probably bleed green, because that's how deeply committed I was, to the mission that the company at that time had. But I think I just want to step away and say, yes, of course, there is a flip side to what you said, around people getting addicted. But again, I'll come back to the fact that who is doing the scrolling? Who is doing the messaging? Who is doing the aimless? It's you and me. The company is, of course, making it engaging. And in a capitalist society, that is their motivation. But can I, now that I'm aware that I'm doing this and I'm getting addicted, can I step back and take charge of my life and take charge of where I want to spend my time? And I'm not saying that I have not been a victim of that. Mindless scrolling at night, or, you do that and you start watching a reel and before you know it, 2 hours have gone by and all you've been doing is just been on that phone. And after that 2 hours, you feel mentally fatigued and yet you feel you've done nothing. And you're exhausted and you don't feel productive. You feel like, okay, what's going on? But then once I did it a few times, after that, I was like, what? Come on. Like, this is me. This is this phone is not going to run me. I need to use this phone for my purpose. It can't be the other way around, that the phone decides how I'm going to spend my time.
Again, that point, like detaching yourself from it and seeing it from a third perspective.
Yes. And that, what is really my goal? What am I doing? How do I want to spend my time? Do I want to spend my time doing this? And I think also the stories we tell ourselves, we are scrolling या कुछ YouTube पे देखा तो ऐसा लगता है अरे मैं सीख रहा हूँ ना, like I'm learning a skill, or I'm watching this and I'm learning. Yes, up to a point. After that, I know I'm bullshitting myself. I'm just being lazy, I'm procrastinating, and I'm telling myself this story that I'm learning something. So find a way to be far more true to yourself and being honest and being brutally honest to yourself, because that's when change happens. If I can't agree that yes, I am being addicted and I am doing mindless scrolling, which I was, I'm not going to be able to bring that change. सबसे पहले तो awareness होनी चाहिए, acceptance होनी चाहिए कि मैं कर रही हूँ ये और ये मेरे लिए ठीक नहीं है. Then the change will happen. On when I mindlessly pick up my phone when I'm sitting with family and I'm going through reels, there's something in my brain saying, do you really want to do that? Then you put your phone back down and be like, no, I want to spend time with you. I want to be present. I really want to have this conversation because I don't know when am I going to get this time again. And that is more important for me than, like you were saying early in this conversation about FOMO. Over a period of time, there is no FOMO because you realize that you are where you are meant to be in this moment. And there has to be a certain kind of peace with where I am in this moment with you having this conversation. Because neither am I being able to make the most of this conversation and being with you in this present moment. Because mentally I'm like, वो रील में क्या चल रहा है, वो क्या चल रहा है, क्रिकेट मैच में क्या हो रहा है, उसमें क्या हो रहा है. Neither am I making the most of this, nor am I being able to watch the cricket match. So in life you have to take that decision. Like they say, what you lose on the swings you gain on the roundabouts. So what you are losing here, you're going to gain there. You can't have both. And that's also fine. There has to be some peace with knowing that this is the decision I have made, which is I want to be here with you having this conversation, and let me make the most of it and let me be 100% present.
But don't you get zoned out? As in, the person cannot always be talking about what beliefs you have.
Agreed? Absolutely. Of course, I zone out. I mean, there are moments now where, because I have trained myself so much to be in the present, that the other person is saying something boring, and I'm actually telling myself, can I please think about the 5 things I need to do? But I'm not able to take my mind there anymore. Because, the mind is
I hope
like
there is
that.
not a situation like this
No,
here.
not at all. I'm enjoying this conversation a lot. But I'm just saying that, yes, you're right. When you train your mind to do certain things, then it becomes a habit. And that also brings me to the other thing, which is we can train our minds. We should not be doing what our mind tells us to do. We should be able to control where our mind should be. And that I'm able to do because of my meditation practice, where I am being able to be in the present, where I don't suffer from FOMO, or the fact that I am able to deal with anxiety a little bit better. Because anxiety is always about either you're thinking of the future and creating situations, simulating situations mostly, or you're also thinking about what if I don't do this? Situations of, if I'm not successful, if I don't achieve my goal, if this person doesn't give me a job, right? So you're again thinking of the future, but also beating yourself up already for things that have not even happened. So I think training your mind to come back to the present and say, but what can I do about it today? If I am fearful of the fact that I am not going to be successful, what are the 5 things I can do to be successful? First is, of course, define what success looks like for me, which is very important. Don't just fall for the rat race. If for everyone making money, buying a house is success, maybe that's not what it is for you. So define what does success look like. And then what are the 4-5 things or skills that I need to get, whether that's reading a book or going out and, talking to people for the profession that I want to work at. Like, for example, for me, it was public policy. I went and met a lot of people, spoke to a bunch of people who were doing public policy to understand what will my life look like if I get into this space. And now you have the internet, that's the positive side of the internet. You can reach out to people on LinkedIn, wherever else, at least ask. And most times you will get a yes. If you ask with a clear goal of what you are looking for, most people are willing to make the time to have that conversation. So I think doing this work just helps me be in the present a lot more, along with my meditation. So there's not that much, I would say, there's a certain kind of peace that comes with meditation. And I would urge every one of you to try it, for sure. And meditation has nothing to do with some religious connotation. मतलब, वो ऐसा हो गया है, but ऐसा नहीं है. Meditation is just simply about regulating your mind. And regulating your mind is not religious. It's a human need. You go out and you exercise for your physical self. We do other things for our mind. But what are we doing to expand our consciousness? Or listening to our inner voice, which is the most important thing? Very little. So how can you really tap into that? And it could be different ways that people do it. A lot of people say, I get peace through running. Great. But find what that is for you. And that can also keep changing. For me, it's always been meditation. So that's given me the anchor.
Like suppose if for me podcast is like being at peace, so would you like to say that I am meditating when I'm doing this podcast? Would we like term it like that?
Not, I wouldn't say you're meditating, but I'd certainly say that you're tapping into a different dimension, right? You're tapping into a creative side. It's giving you some peace of mind. It's giving you some way to cut off from the clutter and the noise that you probably go through usually in your day. Is that correct? Like, is that how you feel when you're podcasting?
Yeah,
At peace?
I wouldn't say completely at peace because obviously things are coming up in the mind, but I feel when you have a person with you or even bunch of people with you, it's like the moment is very pure. I would say that. So that purity is something that I really thrive for.
Absolutely. Those real meaningful connections and, feeling like you get each other. I think those are magical. And I completely resonate with you on that. But I think meditation is a little bit different. And, maybe we should try it at some point. I think it just gives you a lot more connection with your inner voice, with your inner self. I feel like it's like a, बोलते हैं ना एकदम, it's like a कवच कि आपके बाहर कुछ भी हो रहा हो, but I have the ability to stay connected with my inner self and find that peace and calm no matter what the external environment is, and also be able to hear my intuition.
But isn't it like suppose like most young people nowadays are having this existential crisis, this
Yes.
word that they always have in their mind, like they have this existential crisis and they are always worried. आज पैसे खत्म हो गए, month end आ गया, वो ये कर रहा है, मैं कुछ नहीं कर रहा हूँ. So because of things like this, there are so many things coming up in my mind. Even if I decide to sit down and like close my eyes and finally do the meditation thing, I think it sort of creates that avenue that I won't be able to focus on.
So I think, that's also one thing which is in the English language, meditation is termed as focusing or concentrating on one thing. Whereas dhyana is about transcending the mind. And why I say that is because the mind's tendency is to think. Mind है ही thinking के लिए, thoughts के लिए ही है. Like you have your feet because, or your legs is for walking. So I am not going to stop my mind from thinking. All I am going to do is try and regulate those thoughts. So yes, when you close your eyes, even today after practicing for so long, when I close my eyes, it's not like that I don't get thoughts. It's just that over a period of time, that space of being thoughtless keeps expanding or keeps increasing. So when I started, maybe I got that thoughtless state, or I was able to experience that for 1 second or maybe 5 seconds, just a flash. Now I'm able to do that for a bit longer because it comes with practice, like with anything else. I see, like, it looks like you do a lot of gymming and working out. Did you go there? Did you go first day and were you able to lift 100 kilos? But that's what we expect when we go for meditation. बस ऐसे होना चाहिए, क्योंकि मैं आई हूँ, वही बड़ी बात है. मैं ट्राई कर रही हूँ, वही बड़ी बात है. क्यों नहीं थॉटलेस होना चाहिए? No, like with anything, it takes time. And also, it's the technique that you choose. It's also, understanding and giving it that 100%. You are not me कि सुबह मैं 1 जनवरी को गई, जिम में साइन अप किया, फिर मई में मैं बोलती हूँ अरे मेरा गोल था 100 किलोस का डेडलिफ्ट करना है और मेरे सिर्फ 20 किलो के हो रहे हैं, क्योंकि आप जैन से लेके मई तक सिर्फ 5 दिन गए, तो उससे तो नहीं होगा. Similarly, in meditation, you need to commit to a technique and then try it for 1 month, 2 months, whatever time, and then say whether it has worked for you or it has not worked for you. But the tendency I have seen, it happens with me also, that I will not give my 100% and then blame the product or blame the technique or blame the other person. I need to take responsibility for my actions and hold myself accountable first. So if choose a technique and do it, you will get thoughts, but eventually you will be able to transcend them. And I'm happy to, for whoever's listening who wants to try meditation, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to run you through at least a meditation that I do, which is called Heartfulness. It's a very simple, integrative practice. I also think that everyone thinks about meditation as 1 घंटा नहीं है ना सुबह मेडिटेशन करने के लिए, तो मैं करूंगी नहीं. 5 मिनट से शुरू करो. शुरू तो करो. Start it.
Can this thing, like, it's a very, I think, explicit question, but can this thing ever exchange, or I would say, we can do this in place of doing therapy? Like, because nowadays therapy is a trend. So, do you feel like if we escape therapy, we don't go to therapy, and we move towards meditation, we can make better results, better outcome?
I think you need both.
Okay.
What happens with therapy is that, and I've taken therapy, so I know what you mean. I was meditating, but what became so alive to me in therapy is that a lot of the reactions and that I was having was because there were certain stories that I had told myself when I was growing up. To bring that shift in the belief system is sometimes needs to be done even intellectually. So the therapy helped me do it intellectually, but my meditation helped me bring that change almost to a permanent level where I don't go back to those tendencies anymore because I meditate. So the therapy told me the why of what I am doing. For example, if I get triggered on certain things, it made me more alive to why was I doing that? Because there's something that I had gone through, there's a story I told myself and questioned my self-worth. And so I was still going through that. But just knowing it is not enough to bring the change. Because it's a very intellectual process, knowing. But actually becoming what I want to become, which is calmer, far more kinder, more empathetic, more sensitive, more in touch with myself, prioritizing myself, setting boundaries. Those are things which also my meditation helped me evolve into. So both go hand in hand. I don't think one can replace the other. But as long as your attitude is, I'm open, I want to learn, I want to get better, you'll find different ways to go there. Because the other thing I also want to say about therapy and meditation is that a lot of times people are not happy with where they are. Like for example, I was not happy with where I was in my life at that time. I was struggling with a few things. But then when you start meditating or when you start taking therapy, you need to do things differently to bring the change that you want to get to. So I want to stop getting angry or I want to be calmer, but I will do the things the way I do them today. To put it very simply, I want to lift that 100 kilo deadlift, but I will go to the gym only 5 times. इतने में करा दो यार आफ्ताब, नहीं तो नहीं हो पाएगा. तो ऐसा नहीं होता है. If I have a goal, then I have to do the work to reach that goal. And which means I have to change the things that I do, the smaller things that I do every day to bring that, for me to achieve that goal.
Progressive overload.
Yes, it can be progressive overload or it can just be far more conscious of making the smaller decisions. When I'm getting angry and I know it's coming up for me, can I actually pause, step away from that situation and come back and regroup? Instead of again using the same pattern, which is you spoke to me rudely, so I'm getting angry. If I do the same thing, then where is the change? But that's what we keep doing. I want the change. I want my life to change. This is how I think my life should be. But I will continue to do what I do today. I will still wake up at 10 o'clock. I will still have a bad lifestyle. I won't eat properly. But my life should be like Indra Nooyi. Doesn't work that way. If you want your life and you want that success, you have to put in the work. And so therefore, for me, when somebody like Narayan Murthy says that, I used to work for 70 hours, or his wife has now said he used to work actually 90 hours, what he's trying to say, or what I take away is, when you have certain goals and you have those sort of ambitious goals like he had, then you need to put in that sort of work. But that also doesn't mean that you and I only should have goals like building Infosys. My goal can be very different. My goal can be the life that I'm leading now. I'm very happy with it. I want to be middle management. I want to lead this peaceful life, because what comes with it is a lot of time, and I want to spend more time with my family. My priorities can be different. But whatever that is, be aware of it, and then whatever you need to do to get to what those goals are, that work needs to be put in. And so, therefore, even with therapy and meditation, if you have a goal, you need to start doing things differently.
So, like, how do you put this for a young guy or a girl watching this? How would you put this, like, if they want to sort of change their life? Well, not completely, you can't change it like completely, but like getting at a specific threshold, like where you can say, now I feel satisfied.
So, I'll tell you a small change that I made recently to your point around social media addiction, right? So, I realized that every day I wanted to not look at my phone first thing in the morning, right? As like कुछ करना है, first 30-35 minutes, 1 hour, I should not look at a device. But every time I would wake up, alarm को snooze करो या उसको dismiss करो, immediately उसी 100 notifications. It's like WhatsApp देख लो, Instagram देख लो, ये देख लो. And then suddenly after 2 hours, I'd be like, today also I haven't done anything differently. I've done the same thing. So I said, okay, there has to be a solution. I went and got an analog watch. वो था ना अजंता का, वो एकदम छोटा, for you it's even, मतलब you would have not even heard about Ajanta, but like a very analog kind of small clock. Just a simple alarm clock. Now I put my alarm on that. And my device is far away from me. So I am forced to shut that alarm, and I can now be conscious that I will not pick up that device because it's far away from me.
Getting old school in the Gen Z era.
Yes, I know it's counterintuitive, but it's helping me achieve the goal that I want to. And for me, it was a lot about thinking about what is important versus what is urgent. And I'll tell you what I mean by that is, when you get up and you are always, and we all, even as students, you'll have other things where you can categorize what is urgent versus important. Urgent is more around, oh, tomorrow I need to submit this dissertation or this particular assignment, or I have an exam. But important is, what is my long-term goal? Where do I see myself? What are the things I need to do to be job ready? What are the things that I need to do to prepare for my interview? That is not tomorrow. I'm presuming that the interview is 3 months away. So that is important. That's how you categorize what is important versus urgent. But because I was getting into this habit of picking up my phone, is I'm just in always reactive mode. I am not giving myself the time to step back and say, how do I want to spend my day? Because you just very quickly get sucked into that. Before you know it, you've done 5 calls, you've gone over 40 emails, and it's already 6 p.m. and you've not even gotten down to the actual work that you needed to do, which is the strategy work, the thinking work. So I've been able to make that change with such a small thing, which is just get a watch, just get a clock, and I'm not going to keep reacting. I'm going to spend the first 1 hour deciding what I want to do during my day. I think that's one thing. And the second thing is, we set a lot of goals, and this I heard on some podcast. I can't remember where, but very often we set goals, and the reason why we're not able to achieve those New Year resolutions that we have is because we don't translate those goals into daily calendarized time. So for me, it's more like this year I had decided I'm going to start this podcast, right? And what does that mean? So very quickly around Jan, Feb, I started to spend and calendarize or block time on my calendar for half an hour to read about what does podcasting look like. Pick up the phone on 5 people I know who have done it or have some insight on it. So then I basically looked at what is my goal in a week, how much time am I spending to achieve that goal? We don't spend time, we don't block time, and then we say, अरे यार हुआ ही नहीं यार, फिर साल निकल गया, कुछ नहीं हुआ.
Planning before the war.
Exactly. Preparing. Because if you're not conscious, you're not going to be able to do that. And I think secondly, also that means that those that if I've decided to do podcasting this year, which means I cannot go to Everest Base Camp that I really wanted to do. I have now pushed that to next year. You can't do everything, and that's a reality. But you can, over a period of time, get everything if you can plan better and prepare better. Make sense?
I think it does, but it will take me some time to digest it.
No, but you asked me like what are some things which are very clear activities that you can do. So I think some of this can then eventually, if you do this maybe for 6 months, try it out, even the goal and the activity thing, right? You'll see that you're feeling far more confident because you're achieving the things that you'd actually set out yourself to do. Otherwise, they just remain resolutions in a diary somewhere, which you look at in December and you're like, अरे इस बार भी नहीं हुआ यार, चलो अगले साल करते हैं.
You're saying कि micromanage your things.
Not just be more thoughtful and create time. If you want to learn tennis, you have to go join a class or go out and block time to go play tennis for an hour. But sometimes we don't do that small work or spend that time thinking, yeah, unless I don't block my time, wo nahi hoga. Right? And I think the other thing that I also do around my own goals or my own growth is also making other people accountable. What I mean by that is कि like for example मेरे लिए सुबह उठना बहुत मुश्किल है. I struggle with waking up in the morning. So then when I want to do that, then over a period of time I'll find a friend who I can go for a run with, or I play golf, so I'll fix a golf game in the morning instead of in the afternoon. So then I'm making, because my friend is coming for a run, I will show up. Because I'm committed. So I will show up. Then I'll not snooze and go back to sleep and be like, अच्छा कोई नहीं देख रहा है, ठीक है, सो जाओ और 9 बजे, it's okay. Let me sleep till 10 a.m. today also. So making, helping or finding ways that you can build ownership for your goals around you.
So like with this only, like what happens when you actually start doing this thing, especially from a young perspective? When I do things, let's say like I decide that I'm going to devote my time to podcast and workout, and I'm going to exclude a bit from my social life. I'm not going to socialize with people, my friends, and obviously families included. So when you do things like this, I think you get this FOMO बाद में कि I'm missing out on so many things. I'm too young and I'm missing out. Like many people tell me like you're spending so much time here. Like what about the enjoyment? Though I don't say anything at that time, but deep down I'm having this thought in my subconscious, what if this thing doesn't work out and I'm still like devoting so much into it, and then I do get this FOMO. So like from a young perspective again.
Of course. इतनी भी बूढ़ी नहीं हूँ, young perspective बार बार बोले जा रहा है, so I'm not that old. Are you enjoying the time that you're spending doing podcasting?
Sometimes I do get bored, I get irritated, like why are not people accepting the invitation that I'm sending them? But yeah, usually I do.
So I think it's again about the goals, and I'll give you an example. When I was in school and college, I spent most of my time playing golf because I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to play professional golf, and I felt like that is my calling and that's what I'm going to do. And then you get out of college and reality strikes, and you're like, okay, you need to be financially independent. You need to pay bills. You want to live on your own. But when I was playing golf, you make a lot of sacrifices, like you're doing when you're doing podcasting, which is you have a certain discipline. You sleep early, you wake up early. My schedule looked, no, I'm saying when I was playing sport, my day or evening looked very different from my friends' evenings. They were going and playing in the park, or they were hanging out with their friends and then watching some content. Back then we didn't have Netflix, but you still had television, so you're watching cable TV, you were watching something, and you're doing your homework and going to bed. For me, the minute I finished school, I'd go straight to the golf course, and before that I was playing a lot of tennis, so I'd go straight to the tennis court, play for 2-3 hours, come back, you're so exhausted, so you just quickly do your homework, you eat something and you sleep, because you're waking up early again to either work out or do some exercise, because that's what you need to do. Was that sacrifice for me? No. I loved every minute of it. And will I change it for anything? No. because that discipline is what makes me even good at what I do today.
But then what about the social life that you had or that you could have?
I did. I developed a social life after that. It's not that I don't have friends, or it's not that I don't have family who supports me, or I don't have great friends. Of course, I do. But the fact that you're also podcasting, isn't that giving you a peep into a completely different social context from what your friends are getting, because you are meeting people of a different experience and caliber?
That's true.
So you're just developing a different kind of social skill. You're also building a different kind of social circle. So it's not that you're missing out on anything. It's just how you look at it.
Your journey is different.
It's different because those are decisions and choices that I made, and I will continue to make, because I know what I want. And it's not like I always knew what I want when I was in college, but you kind of know. Like, for example, you know you want to spend this time podcasting, growing your channel. I don't know what the motivations are, but I understand that that's where you want to spend a lot of your time. You want to learn. You want to learn from other people's experiences and wisdom. That's probably why you're doing this. And so that's a decision you're making. And so you are spending time and investing time to do that. And you only have that limited 1 hour. You can either do this, or you can go out and do whatever else. There's an opportunity cost to every hour that you spend. But I think it's, again, coming back to, what do you want out of that 1 hour? What are your goals? And that does not mean that I'm always only working towards goals. It'll drive me crazy. I'll be burnt out. Of course, there are times where I'm doing nothing. And that's also beautiful. Earlier, I would put myself on a guilt trip for doing nothing. It's like if I spent a weekend just sleeping and eating and watching content, the next day I'll be like, yeah, how we do self-talk. Kuch nahi kiya, you wasted the whole day, you could have done this. What a stupid person, why have you done this? But I'm not doing that anymore, because if I'm not kind to myself and I'm not good to myself, I do not have that quality, and I'm not authentic with being kind to you either, or my friends or my family. I've learned that.
Do you believe in fate? Sorry for such
100%.
a different question, but
No,
yeah.
please don't be sorry. 100%. I believe in faith. I believe in destiny.
Fate, I mean.
Yeah, fate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in fate. I believe in destiny, for sure. That you are meant for certain things. Isn't that what you were asking me for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about then free will?
When you can really dig deep and find what your purpose is, and then somehow free will is just listening to your inner voice and making those decisions and choices that align and bring you certain, I would say, resonance with what's happening outside to inside. I think free will, honestly, is a very egoistic concept. I want to make myself believe like I have power. I honestly don't. The only power I have is to be able to not react but respond in this moment. Or to say whether I want to do A or B. The decisions or the choices I make. That's the only limited free will. Because guess what? What is meant to happen in life will happen to you. The only free will that I can exercise is, how do I receive what is happening to me? Can I take it as a learning, and can I look for how can I get better and how can I learn from this struggle? That is the only free will I have. Whether that struggle will happen or not is not in my control. And so this perception that we have that I can just absolutely control and decide where I want to take my life is, again, a misnomer I had when I was young. Because you feel with control, control gives you a sense of power, it gives you a sense of comfort. But after a while, you realize that what you can do is do the things that you need to do. Like they say in the Gita, just do the hard work, don't think about the outcome. And that also allows you to be in the present moment. I cannot give my 100% in this moment if all the time I'm thinking, इस podcast में कितने views आएंगे, लोग viral करेंगे कि नहीं. I cannot think of 2, 3 things at the same time because then I'm not giving my 100%. But if I'm really here doing my best, giving it my 100%, and the conversation is great, automatically whatever is meant to happen will happen. So I think the free will is only limited to that. There are things that are in my life that have happened which have been, you know, which have shaken my core. It happens to all of us. Either there's a loss or there's a mental trauma or there's an emotional uh, turbulence that you go through. And I think the only way I have become better is because I was talking about heartfulness, and there is a global guide, and I wrote to him once saying, this has happened, everything in life is going wrong, whatever I do is not working out, and I'm doing my best, I'm giving it my 100%, yet nothing is working out. I feel like everything in life is just coming at me. I'm completely broken, shattered. And the only one line he wrote back to me over an email was, there are no whys in life, there's only acceptance. And to me, at that time, when I read it, I felt like, oh, it's so complacent. Just acceptance. Like, I would want somebody to say, go fight, go do this, come on. And then I realized that there's so much calmness and peace when there is acceptance. And acceptance, not in the way that whatever you do to me is okay. Come walk all over me, it's fine. No, not that. But saying that, okay, now this has happened. And what had happened was my car was stolen and all of my things were in my car and my laptop and my golf set. Like whatever I identified with all got stolen in my car. And when you're young, you're just starting out your business. You feel like shit, सब गया यार. अब क्या करें? मतलब everything is against you. And then when he sent this to me, there was just so much calmness that came with that acceptance. That अब ये हो गया है, अब क्या करेंगे? What am I going to do from here? Am I going to just be here and crumble and get shattered? Or I'm going to pick up the pieces and then find my energy and find myself again to start all over again? And that didn't require any hoo-ha or external, come on, you can do it. No, it's just there's a very deep sense of knowing that this was meant to be. It's happened for a reason. And now can I pick up the pieces and start again? And that has also made me stronger, more confident. Because if I've gone through that in my life, now if you put me into something else, I'm going to think back and say, उससे निकल गए तो ये भी हो ही जाएगा. ये क्या चीज़ है? जब वो झेल लिया and I've come out strong, तो ये तो हो ही जाएगा. So that I think is something that I take a lot of strength from. So I think struggle is very good from that point of view. It teaches you a lot. If you have the right attitude and you're looking at it with the right purpose.
So fighting your inner battles, I would say.
Very important. Absolutely.
And how is this meditation thing that time? When you are in crisis,
Yes.
it's easy to meditate when everything is calm and composed in life. But when you are in crisis, do you still prefer doing meditation or you would take a break from that stuff?
I actually do it more. क्योंकि क्राइसिस में ही तो क्लैरिटी ऑफ थॉट चाहिए कि क्या करूं मैं, ये करूं या वो करूं. जब क्राइसिस होता है तो those are the decisions that you need to take.
But isn't it like, it's like that meme I'm getting in my head, like there's this guy who is sitting, the whole showroom is burning and he's just sitting there and watching the showroom get burned. So like when you're saying this, so sorry, no offense,
No,
but I'm
no.
having that image in my mind.
We have given ourselves this false sense of success that until we do, only then something will happen. That's our ego that is talking. कि मैंने किया तो ये ठीक हो गया, ये प्रॉब्लम है ना, like it happens in our workplace. There was this huge crisis. I went in there, I thought of this problem, now all is calm, stock price is high because of me. Great, it happened because of you. And when the stock price tanks, will you also take responsibility? No. Then it's the CEO's decision. Wrong decision he took. That's why the stock price is tanked. So, to your point on the showroom is on fire and this guy is just sitting there, I'm not saying that that is meditation, but I'm saying that there's a certain sense of detachment that comes from meditating, and then it gives you perspective. And then you're able to really do what is right for that moment, not right for you, not right for me, but what is right for that moment. Because even in that moment, if it means that I pull in Aftab to solve this problem with me and we collaborate, because I'm meditating, I will do that. Because I know that's the right thing. But if my ego is playing in, I'll be like, no, ये आएगा तो इसको क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा, चांस ही नहीं है, ये तो मेरे को ही करना चाहिए और मैं करती रहूंगी और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व नहीं होगी. So you have neither have you learned nor have you collaborated just because of your ego. And so that meditation really gives you that perspective. And then you're able to come up with the solution that solves the problem or the crisis. Not create a moment where I can go and chest thump and feel good. Make sense?
Again, I'm trying to calculate that in my own head. Like, like there should be an app basically. Like whenever any Gen Z person is in trouble, they should open this app and then they should hear your advices, I'd say. Because you know the thing that I really like about you, like preaching about spirituality, is you're not saying, like people say, be at peace, but peace cannot be always there. Like you're literally saying struggle is good, pain is good, you should keep that with you. People don't say that who are usually more inclined towards spirituality and healing. So I really like that part of the conversation.
No, thank you for that. And I think it's also to do with just the practice, right? I think it's just because heartfulness is a very integrative practice. We don't say that for you to meditate or for you to evolve or for you to attain samadhi or liberation or whatever else your spiritual goal is, that you need to leave all your materialistic life and then suddenly go into the middle of the Himalayas and that's when you're going to gain liberation or you're going to evolve yourself. It's like you are flying on two wings, like a bird flies on two wings. One is your materialistic life, which is all of this, and then what your spiritual life is. And each of it feeds into each other. And so, therefore, whatever I'm saying, you find it that it resonates and is practical because I'm living it and I'm doing it. I'm not just reading it from a book and then telling you and saying, no, you should be at peace. And especially about meditation. If I tell you, you should not think about the white polar bear and now close your eyes and all you're going to think about is that white polar bear. And that's how our mind is. And so peace is really something you find and you work towards constantly. And so is happiness. I think I've realized that we always hold everyone else accountable for our happiness. Happiness is a choice we make every day. At least that's a choice I make every day. Because there are 30,000 things I can be sad about. If for nothing else I'll be sad, oh, dekho, Israel mein itne log mar rahe hain. Of course I'm sad about it. Of course I'm upset about it. But that doesn't stop me from living my life every day to the fullest. So happiness is a choice that I think we all should make because that's when we are able to be the best versions of ourselves. And I'm not again saying what I said earlier, which is I'm not feeling happy, but I show myself to be happy. Like fake it till you make it. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there are 50,000 things to be grateful for. And let's not forget that. I can be, I can look at your YouTube followership and be like, dude, have envy and be like, why, how come he has so many followerships and I should be very upset about it and feel sad about it. Or I can be happy and I can come see you and be like, bro, what are you doing right, man? Tell me also. मेरे को भी करना है. बता क्या कर रहा है?
Similar thing with your Instagram. What are you doing?
Exactly. So we always have that choice. It's about us with what choice do I want to make? Do I want to sit here and be envious of you and feel all those negative emotions and create toxicity? or do I actually just want to walk up and say, dude, I really, even I want this, man, मेरे को भी करना है, बता कैसे कर सकते हैं? Because there is enough opportunity in this world for you and for me and for him and for him, for all of us to grow and achieve our goals. That I can tell you. There isn't one spot in this world. I think we always think of life as a zero sum game, which is why we always are fighting and struggling, and I'm pulling you down. And because I think there's that one position that we are all fighting for. Life isn't a zero sum game. I think once you start to think of life as being a play of abundance, and that there is a place for me, if I'm here, there is a place for me, there is a purpose for me. I just need to find what that purpose is. Every door will open for you. Everything will happen much more easily.
Sorry for such a long pause. Again, calculating. But actually, the next thing that I wanted to ask was basically, how do you actually do meditation for exactly for Gen Z peeps? I mean, we are literally spending our time doing vapes, cigarettes, dating apps. If nothing is happening, like if literally nothing is happening, when we are bored of Instagram, we'll move to dating apps. चलो अभी ये कर लेते हैं. And then similarly, there are certain other different sections of things that we'll keep doing, but not meditation. How do you really implement that in your life at a young age, because you are very vulnerable also
Yeah.
at that time? So for that, if you could really guide the dear Gen Zs like me.
Honestly, I can just share with you from my experience. Even though I grew up in this environment where my parents were meditating, but it's not like I took it just because my parents were doing it. You know how, especially when you're a teenager and you're a young adult, if your parents tell you कि तुम्हें meditate करना है, फिर तो पक्का ही नहीं करना है. वो तो एक चीज़ है, आप करोगे नहीं, पक्का से. You know, so I also went through that phase, right?
Yeah.
But I realized that because I was playing competitive golf, that when I was feeling that anxiety or that hands were shaking when I need to make that 4-foot putt to win the tournament, and I missed it and I was not able to make it, not because the skill wasn't there, but because I was not able to regulate my mind, not able to control my emotions. Then I realized the only way I can do that is meditate. So I started meditating, of course not telling my parents, but following the same thing but doing it on my own, क्योंकि उसमें भी ईगो है ना, कि कैसे मैं बता दूं आपको कि आपने जो बोला है वो मैं कर रही हूँ. So I did it in a quiet room, but when I started to meditate, I saw how I was able to deal with those situations in a far more effective way. I think meditation is something, and my global guide also say this, where you are the experiment and you are the experimenter. What he means by that is, you meditate for 1 week or 1 month and you journal every day about how your life is going. Just be a little bit more tuned in on how things are happening, what's happening inside of you, consciously. And then for 1 week, don't meditate. You decide then which path you want to take. And for me, it was that when I started to meditate, I was better when I was playing golf. I was much calmer. I was getting a lot more outcome, better impact in everything else that I was doing. Then when that was happening, then you build more faith. You're like, ये तो चल रहा है, चलो और करते हैं. Let me find out more. Let me meditate. Let me become stronger in my practice. And that's how I really started doing it. Anything else, which is, let's say, around addiction, I feel is a lot around, it's more of an escapism. I'm not really facing my fears or being true to myself in that moment. I'm just finding an easier out. And then that becomes a habit. For me, addiction is, I always say when I'm stressful, my happy place is just one workout away or one run away. Like if you just go exercise in that moment, if I'm able to push myself to get up and just exercise or do something, the dopamine kicks in. But I always have the choice, and we all have that choice of, picking up that cigarette which is lying next to me, very well knowing that it's going to only harm me. But doing it for once in a while is okay, because I think you should also go through that experience. I mean, I've not smoked, but I'm saying, like, I think if you want to experiment, you can, but you should know where the boundary for that experiment is. And at some point, when you start to get addicted, you should also dig deep to find out what are you escaping that you are using this addiction. Because we're always trying to escape something. Either it's a fear, or it's a lack of self worth, or it's just the inability to spend time with yourself because you feel so lonely, or you just don't like who you are. There are many things, but it's always much deeper. Addiction is not as simple as, oh, I just drink, or I just vape, or I just smoke. If you're getting addicted to it, there's something much more to it. So put in that work on what that is, and can you then find a way to address it in a constructive way? And if it's just experimentation, amazing. Do it. You should go through that experience. Why not? That's what a lot of, your young years are for. This is the time you're going to get to experiment. But don't get sucked in that you don't know what you're doing and the activity is sort of driving your decisions and your agenda. That's the only advice I would say. Or that's what I have learned with my experience. And I do these really stupid things, like you can call me bizarre, but it's like literally the minute I start feeling like I'm getting addicted to something, I'll try and change that habit and question myself. So I'll be, I'm like those crazy people will be like, okay, 2 weeks. Like I feel like, for example, I'm drinking a lot of coffee, then suddenly I'll be like, okay, I'm off coffee. Why? Because I'm testing my mind, I'm testing myself that am I really addicted to it? Because if you ask me today, are you addicted to it? I'll be like, no, don't give me coffee. I'll be just fine. And I'm actually just lying to myself, right? क्योंकि देखो 5 दिन मेरे को कॉफ़ी मत दो और आओ फिर मेरे से सुबह 10 बजे मिलने. You will find a snappy person who's, or somebody who's very dull. But I still tell you, if you tell me, oh, is it because you've not had coffee? No. You think coffee? Not at all. It's just I've had a bad night or it's very stressful at work. So I'm again lying to myself. So I think those are the things I would say we should just do a lot more deeper introspection on. And if that means that there is also a lot of peer pressure, because I went through a lot of peer pressure when I was growing up. Why aren't you drinking? You're so boring. We
You don't
won't.
drink.
Yeah, like I won't party with you because you're boring and you don't drink alcohol. What are you going to come and do? तू दारू नहीं पिएगी और हम सब दारू पी रहे हैं तो फिर कैसे चलेगा? You'll be standing there and judging us. I said, ठीक है. But it's a great way in retrospect. At that time, I used to feel bad. That, oh, I'm like not going out and partying. And then later on, I realized that was a great way for me to filter out not so good relationships, which would have not anyway tested or sort of gone through the test of time. So I filtered out a lot of this trashy sort of relationships, I feel, because then the ones that I really made were the people who took me for who I am and accepted me the way I am with the choices I made for myself. They were not there to change me, or they were not there to say, if you don't do this, we won't hang out with you. And that's always the tougher choice. But then those relationships last because they're not there for you. They're not there because you're drinking and let's have fun together. Those relationships are the ones where even when you're down and out and you're in the gutter, they'll come and pull you out. And those are the relationships and those are the friendships you want, isn't it?
True. I'm having this image that you being not sorry for objectifying, but
No.
you being Virgin Mojito and other people being Pina Colada, and that's how the thing is. But that's where the beauty lies. Even you are Virgin Mojito and other are Pina Colada, but still they are appreciating you for what you are.
Because there's only beauty in diversity. It's the differences that make our world so beautiful. And can I learn something from you and can you learn something from me and can we like just grow and evolve? That's what makes this fun, no?
True that. Even though I hate to end this conversation because we'll end up discussing, I guess, 3-4 hours long, every aspect of life in detail. But to end this beautiful conversation, I think it's a very cliched question, but I think you really would be having something like an anecdote that I'm obviously going to keep with myself, and obviously viewers are also going to keep with themselves. That what sort of advice you would like to give to the young Gen Z people or young adults Even you see people in your offices, or there are people who are in their colleges who are figuring out who they are, what they are going to do. What would be your piece of advice for them?
Again, I don't see myself in a great place to give advice, but I can share, what I think will work or will not work. And I'd love for your, audiences to sort of try it and come back and say what worked, didn't work, give me some feedback, because I think that's also a great way for me to also learn with what's happening. But I think that I feel that, young people, like I was saying, have a lot of exuberance. But I think what is a big struggle for you guys is also a choice. You have many choices now. When we were growing up, when I was also growing up, which is not very far away from when you were growing up, just a few years apart, I think, there were very limited options in terms of career choices, right? And now you have so many, which I think is a blessing. Like when I look at it, I say, oh wow, like you have so many choices. But I think when you are in that situation, you're like, oh my God, I have so many choices. Now what do I really choose and where do I go? And so I think just not getting overwhelmed. I think it's easy for me to say not getting overwhelmed, but I think just, again, spending that time with yourself to do that search of what I want to do, what I don't want to do. And that's also something which will change. But at least let's figure it out today what you want to do and not want to do. And I think the way I used to look at my strengths and weaknesses back in the day was, how typically, oh, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this, right? That's how we usually write strengths and weaknesses. I think I've learned that strengths are more around things that give me energy. So that is my strength. Like having these conversations gives me energy, which means it's something that I can work towards and hopefully make it, maybe eventually make it a career or think of making it a career. And weakness is more stuff that, not weakness, but things that I don't particularly enjoy, things that drain my energy. So then I know those are things I don't want to do. Like I'm not good at admin work, or I'm not good at accounts, or I'm not good at mathematics. So I know that those are things for sure that I'll not want to do. But what are my strengths? And also not bucket them with professions, but bucket them with skill sets. If you're a problem solver, think of yourself as, where can I use this skill in a profession or in a corporate context? Don't think of it as, oh, I want to do public policy. If you have that clarity, amazing. But I'm saying I was someone who didn't have that clarity. So then I started to break it down in terms of skills. What do I enjoy doing? And where will this skill be helpful? Like for me, it's problem solving. For me, it's really enjoying crisis and pressure. For me, it's always, being in a role where I am taking decisions. I want to take that risk. So that's who I am. And it took me time to figure that out. But it's baby steps. You start when you're in college and you keep evolving and it keeps changing. But I think must spend time in doing that. You must also understand, when you're choosing a particular career option, what does your day look like? It doesn't take much now to figure that out. If you want to be an engineer, a mechanical engineer, what your college life look like and what your work life will look like is two different things. Speak to somebody who's done what you are aspiring to do and understand from them, what does their day look like? What are the challenges that they go through? And then take that call on, am I willing to live with that challenge? Because challenges are in every job. It's just about choosing what your tough is, because you will have challenges and tough things, but are you willing to live with that? And if that's something that you can get through and power through, then of course that's the career for you. Otherwise, you have the ability to at least get a peep into what your future work life will look like. And if that's not something you want to sign up for, it's an early indicator of, maybe I'm not meant for this and let me look at something else. But I'm not saying you should get scared of the toughness or the scared of the struggle, because like I'm saying, there will be struggle. It's just what you're willing to live with and what gives you energy. For example, crisis gives me energy. I love it. For someone else, it can cause burnouts, mental fatigue, stress, physical and mental challenges. And so if you are not geared up for that, then don't take on a role where that's going to be your day to day. So I think just talk to people and get a good sense on what does your future life look like in some way. Again, you won't get the full picture, but at least you'll get a peep into what that looks like, and you can make a more considered decision. I think third is, I would say, people look at, like for example, when I joined WhatsApp, a lot of young people want to make the most of the perks, but don't want to put in the work to really be impactful for the company. And I think that I wouldn't call it, I think there's like a sense of entitlement sometimes. And I'm not sort of talking down, but I'm just saying that be aware when that entitlement kicks in. Because every time you get a perk from a company or from anywhere, it's like even in your young years, your parents give you the freedom. Let's say they give you the car key and say, hey, now you can go on your own and drive the car. They're also trusting you with that freedom. Don't forget about that trust. Don't forget about that responsibility, that there is a perk that's being given, but it also comes with the fact that I'm trusting you that you will use it rightly, and you will also at the same time do your work and deliver. I very often feel like people want the perk but don't want to do the work. And I think, that's sometimes very disappointing, because it's a very tough conversation to have with somebody who's young, because you don't want to, you don't want to discourage them, but you also want to tell them that there's a certain responsibility that you have. So just be aware of what that responsibility is. And I think the last thing really is, I have at least grown up with this value, and, my parents have instilled this in me, which is that, it's good to feel that you're great. Like I always feel I'm amazing at what I do, and it gives me a certain kind of confidence. But I always walk into a conversation and an interaction knowing that the person opposite of me is always greater. And I feel that brings in a lot of humility and openness for me to learn about what you have to teach me. Not even teach me, what is it that I can observe? Because life doesn't happen in classrooms. Life doesn't happen just in sessions or in certifications. Life is happening every moment. And so can I learn? Can I observe? Can I take away something from you? Because there is always something that you can learn from the person opposite you. And so I feel like there's a lot of judgment that we put in, and especially in this current generation, and at least in my generation, it was, oh, if you can't speak good English, you don't know anything. क्यों भाई? हिंदी में लोग नहीं बात करते क्या? पूरी देश में हम हिंदी में ही बात करते हैं. तो just because you don't know English does not make you any less of me, less than me. So can I learn something from you, and can I not sit in judgment? Because I will walk into this conversation knowing that you are greater and I have something to learn from you. I will be humble and I will judge less, but be far more open. So I think those are the 2-3 things I would say have served me well. I've learned more by living life and living every moment and learning from people around me than I have in the classroom, because of course I was a very bad student, but besides the point. But I think I've learned more just being with people and learning from them and observing what's happening around me than I have through books or through classrooms. And I think that's where the magic and that's where the real stuff happens. So be aware, be open, and just continue to see what you can learn from people around you and value them for who they are.
I guess before this we were having philosophical talks, and now the technical part came in, like how to actually do it. But anyways, thank you so much for that. That was really very enriching to hear. And I guess that was also all from my side. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, I loved it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation too. I hope it wasn't too fluffy, because I think, one thing about your generation is if that things are not given to you quickly and they don't reap results, people just switch off. So I hope your viewers enjoy this, and if they don't, I'd love to get some feedback.
We are building that cult at AP Podcast. We hope we do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, amazing, and congratulations for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you
And
so much.
just keep doing it.
Kudos to you. Please share some Instagram hacks, how to grow. Definitely.
Just one last thing I want to say before we wrap this up. I know it's really long, but the one thing that I've enjoyed in my podcast journey, which started on the 16th of June, is just the stories and the love that people have given me. It's incredible. I just started with this very limited goal of, okay, how can I share stories with people so that others are inspired to start their inner journey, find happiness and find that anchor that meditation has been for me. Whatever it is for you, but find it at least and begin that journey. And when I hear stories like, I listened to your podcast with this guest and, I was depressed and I needed help. But because I heard your podcast, I pushed myself and I booked a therapy. Or somebody who wrote to me saying, I meditated when I was young and I've stopped doing it. But I listened to your guest and your podcast and I was like, okay, I need to start my meditation journey again. And those are the things that just give me so much joy. It's like a warm hug, which then just motivates me to go back and have more enriching conversations, which, by the way, I have grown as an individual myself immensely. So yeah, I just want to share that that's what is really keeping me going, more than the numbers. The numbers are great, by the way. I love the numbers. They should keep growing, but it's the real stories and the real impact that really keep me going.
Yeah, as a fellow podcaster, I feel you there.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure.
Thank you so much for coming on AP Podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine.
गाइस अगर आपने पॉडकास्ट यहाँ तक देखा है तो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर सो मच ऑफ पेशेंस, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर सो मच ऑफ वॉच टाइम एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर सो मच ऑफ love you want to show to your AP podcast, dear AP podcast. So I really hope that I'll see you on next Saturday and we'll keep bringing great guests, we'll keep bringing great people. The only thing we need from you is your support. Please show that by subscribing to our channel, liking the video, and obviously sharing it with your friends. Thank you so much and stay tuned and keep watching AP Podcast.